Happy Wednesday, Justin. How are you?
Feeling lucky, feeling thankful today. How are you?
Oh, I'm feeling good too. Why are you feeling thankful? What's going on?
I turned down the dozen or so Hyundai dealers that just told me I could get in line for a 2023 Ioniq 5. If I had done that, I wouldn't have gotten the tax credit.
All right, so here's the deal. We're jumping back in. More tax credit breakdowns this morning. Yes, you did a great job. I was actually talking to my dad about this. He was saying, if you hadn't gotten your Ioniq 5 this year, which you got at MSRP, kudos to you for having done that, you'd be paying a heck of a lot more money next year if you had waited for it. Because, Justin, you compiled the list. What cars actually qualify for these new EV tax credits? That's what we're going to jump into this morning.
Yes, it is indeed interesting because a lot of the best and greatest EVs out there today are going to lose qualification because of some of the kind of arcane very, very specific requirements that will come into effect in 2023. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to look at what the requirements are, which EVs do qualify, and among those that do they qualify for the whole tax credit? Because that's where you start to get into some new details that we need to definitely talk about.
Yeah, let's break it down. We got about 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes to dig into that, plus the questions that come in. Here's Val already in the chat with us, Justin, saying, I have a Toyota RAV4 Prime arriving August 18th, and I'm going to have to cancel because I can't afford it without the $7,500 tax credit. Do you have some wisdom to drop here for Val?
Yeah, you will still get the tax credit if you're receiving this vehicle on August 18th. So good news, Val. Don't cancel. Hopefully you did not already cancel because the changes we're talking about have not been signed into law yet. Do not worry about it if it's arriving August 18th. That is just a few days away.
So I actually just dropped into the chat the link to the article that you've written, which is just a wealth of information. Join YAA.com/guides, and then you can click on it from there. Everything you need to know about the qualifications for tax credits. But Justin, let's jump into it. What are some of the big standouts here? What are the things you want to make sure we touch on today?
Yeah, we had some viewers remind us a really good point, which is that within the text of the what do they call it? Inflation Reduction Act of 2022.
Yep.
Within the text, it says that for several of the new requirements that we're about to dig into, the secretary, assumingly the Treasury Secretary, will establish the final rules after it is passed into law. So there's like a little bit of uncertainty left. This bill has been passed by the Senate. It's likely to pass the House of Representatives, and then it would go on to President Biden for a signature. So just know everything we're talking about, it's not final, but there's a high likelihood that this is where the situation is going to stand. Shall we dive in?
Let's dive in. I want to especially address James Bond. Great name. Should James be a sad panda because nothing qualifies for the new credit? You pulled some really interesting data. I guess this actually even came from the Congressional Budget Office. They estimate, what is it, like 10,000 vehicles may actually be able to qualify for this next year?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. They say that 11,000 EV sales would qualify for the full credit in 2023. Now, Zach, every year, tens of millions of vehicles are sold in the United
Yep.
States. 11,000, that's just a drop in the bucket. So what gets me, Zach, and I think we're going to have another show with this headline, is that Congress knows what they're doing here. They know that not a lot of EVs are going to be able to take advantage of this credit for several years.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we talked about it just the other day. This is as much an EV tax credit as a domestic let's build batteries in the United States law. So let's jump into it, Justin. Let's talk about the qualifications. What gets a vehicle to be able to take advantage of these revised, likely to be passed into law tax credits, and why so many vehicles won't qualify for them.
Yes. All right. So currently, from 2008 to today, the EV tax credit is for up to $7,500, depending on your own tax liability for purchasing an electric vehicle. Plug-in hybrids qualify for a lesser amount, but the restriction is that once automakers sold 200,000 vehicles, electric vehicles, specifically electric vehicles, the phase out period began and then it lost the tax credit. So that's why Tesla
Yep.
no longer qualifies. That's why GM no longer qualifies, and Toyota is in the phase out period. I want to quickly go over how this is different for those of you who are joining us for the first time. All right. How is this bill so different? Bear with me, you guys. beginning as soon as the bill is signed into law, which could be as soon as the end of this month, according to some estimates. Final assembly of the vehicle must be in the United States, Canada, or Mexico, aka North America. So, American made, North American made, but as soon as the bill is signed into law. That alone is going to completely disqualify several great EVs, including my own Ioniq 5. We'll dig into the full list here in a minute. But here are the other requirements that make it even harder to qualify. Beginning in 2023 or after the Secretary releases the final guidance, 40% of battery minerals must be sourced from the United States or countries we have a free trade agreement with. We looked at the list of free trade agreement countries. I'm just going to list the ones that actually matter for battery mining. And it's going to be Canada, Mexico, Australia, and Chile. Korea is also on the list, but as far as I know, there's not battery mining there. 40%, that's a big requirement to just dive right into on day one, January 1st, 2023. And then from there on, it's going to increase incrementally by 10% through 2028. That is going to be qualifying EVs for half of the tax credit, which is going to be $3,750. The other half, the other $3,750, for a total of $7,500. Beginning also in 2023, 50% of the battery components, so just think battery manufacturing, must be sourced from the US or countries we have free trade agreements with. So it's still at $7,500. One of the upsides of this huge revision is that it can become a rebate, but we had a viewer point out, and thank you very much, that it is going to take effect in 2024, where you can start to claim this as a rebate. Why? Because dealers need a whole year to set up the infrastructure to pass this along to consumers and do all the paperwork with the big scary government. So yeah, Zach, it'll become a rebate January 1st, 2024. That, in my opinion, is great news, but we still need to talk about how few EVs actually qualify.
Yeah, let's jump into it. You have the guide back on the Join YAA website. Again, I'm going to pull it up here. What EVs qualify for the new tax credit? See the winners and losers. If you just go to resources blog, you can find it right there. You listed out here all of the requirements to qualify for the potential tax incentives that have, like you said before, passed the Senate, waiting for the House and waiting for the president's signature. Let's start jumping into which vehicles actually will qualify and those that won't. Sound good?
Yes, let's do it. I want to shout out to Val one more time in the chat because, I really want to help you out, Val. I see what you're saying. We've heard that the House of Representatives is likely to vote on the bill this Friday. I understand your frustrations. If it's possible, Zach, help me out here. Could he maybe try to get a signed purchase order before he takes delivery next week? How does that work?
Yeah, honestly, if you can, that would be the best thing possible when you have one of these factory orders, even though you're not doing an order through Toyota. The best thing you could do would be, Val, use this as leverage to get a signed buyer's agreement with the buyer's order with the dealership. Say, hey, I don't want to miss out on this. I really want to buy it. I just need a signed purchase order, signed buyer's order, so that I can make sure I get the tax credit. So yeah, Val, and for those of you who listen to the podcast, he's making the point that the vehicle, the RAV4 Prime, is made in Japan, so it wouldn't qualify for the new tax incentives that if they were passed into law today, you're right, you would miss out on that. So yeah, get the signed purchase order and use this as leverage for why you need that.
Yeah, we're specifically talking about the transition provision, which allows you to still take advantage of the existing credit if you have a signed purchase order. So thank you for letting us redirect back into that, Zach. Now, yeah, let's talk about which EVs are not going to qualify, because there's a long list of them.
All right, let's do it. Let's pull it up on the screen. I'll let you run through it, Justin.
Yeah, so we did a lot of research looking at where every single electric vehicle sold in the United States is built. And then we tried our best. We tried our darn best to figure out where the batteries are produced. We could usually find out definitely who makes the batteries. But when it comes down to that other half of the new tax credit, where do the minerals come from? That was so hard to find that info. But all right. Breaking the bad news for those of you guys who are interested in these EVs. The following will not qualify for any of the new EV tax credit. Audi e-tron, because
Audi,
you're right. Audi. Okay. Final assembly overseas. BMW iX and i4. Fisker Ocean. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Hyundai Ioniq 5, my beloved Ioniq 5 and the Genesis GV60, assembled overseas. Hyundai Kona and Kia Niro, Jaguar I-Pace, Kia EV, Lexus RZ, Lucid Air, Nissan Ariya, Polestar EVs until the Polestar 3 is assembled in the US, which would be about a year from now. Rivian, they're too expensive. Subaru Solterra, Tesla Model 3. Why? Because it's too expensive for the $55,000 cap on sedan pricing. The rear-wheel drive version, which is more affordable, has batteries that are currently produced by CATL overseas. Tesla Model S and Model X, obviously too expensive. The BZ4X, you can't buy it anyway, even if you wanted to, because of the ongoing stop sale and recall. Volvo C40 and XC40 Recharge. Yeah, Zach, this is a lot of great EVs that are not going to qualify because of mostly the fact that they're assembled overseas.
And this does not include, like, going back to Val for a second here, any plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. We haven't even put them on the list here. That list would be even longer, correct?
Yes, and from who I've spoken to, there is still a little bit of uncertainty with how the bill is worded as to whether or not plug-in hybrids would qualify, because it does not state a minimum battery capacity in the text. Usually that's how we determine these things, but we'll get back to you guys with more info if somehow plug-in hybrids are going to be qualified.
All right, let's jump back in. These electric vehicles are most likely to qualify for the new EV tax credit. So the list you just went through before, they will not. Here are the ones where maybe there's a little hope in the air.
Yeah, this is full of ifs and buts because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's very difficult to find out exactly where the battery minerals are sourced for all of these EVs. That's not readily available information online. The engineers know, but I don't know. I've looked for it. So let's dive in and talk about the nuances here. Cadillac Lyriq. I love the Lyriq. It's going to be built here in America. They're already starting to build it. Powered by GM's Ultium battery platform. It's going to definitely qualify for at least 3750 based on where it's manufactured and where the battery modules are going to be manufactured here in Tennessee. But the full 7500, we don't know yet. We don't know where the minerals come from. Chevy Bolt, the most affordable EV in America, now starting at $26,000 before dealer markups. That is going to qualify, but I'm just going to stop saying it, Zach, because for every single one of these, it depends on where the battery mineral sourcing is coming from. And no one except the engineers themselves that work for the automakers, and maybe not even them, it might just be the battery suppliers themselves. They know where exactly they got the lithium from and so on. So we're going to keep going through the list. The Blazer, recently unveiled by Mary Barra on Twitter, I believe, or Instagram. The Blazer, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to qualify for at least half of it. Equinox EV. That is supposed to be a huge game changer for General Motors. They say it's going to start around 30,000, but they spilled the beans that they're going to have a fleet variant. And Zach, you and I know that the fleet variant is going to be the one to start at 30,000. I'm still hoping for a $35,000 to $40,000 Equinox EV, and it looks like it is going to qualify for at least half of the new incentive. Silverado, awesome. Honda Prologue, which is really a General Motors. It's really an Equinox EV in disguise. GM is building the Prologue for Honda here in the United States. Amazing, right? But that's a whole nother subject. Nissan Leaf. Tragically, Nissan has been rumored to have the Leaf on the chopping block. They're going to get rid of it after, 11 years of service in the United States. I was honestly surprised to learn that the Leaf is built in Tennessee. I did not know that. And the batteries are supplied and assembled here as well. Crazy, right? So the Leaf would become even more affordable. However, it looks like they're going to get rid of it pretty soon. Sad. I wonder if this will change their thoughts on that.
Yeah, seriously.
Now, the best-selling electric vehicle in the United States is currently the Tesla Model Y. It will qualify for at least half, depending on where the battery minerals come from. Final assembly is in Texas and California. Battery components are also made in those two states at the 2 gigafactories. So that is great news for those of you who have been holding out for a Model Y with incentives. But you got to keep in mind, prices for the Model Y have gone up about 20% over the past 14 months. Last but not least, the EV that I almost bought. Test drove it so many times. The Volkswagen ID4. Starting just last month, actually now it would be 2 months ago in June, they started producing the Volkswagen ID4 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is awesome. But if you're going to be claiming the EV tax credit for the Volkswagen ID4 for at least the first year, you're going to need to check your VIN number and be in discussions with your dealer representative to see if your exact ID4 is built in the United States, because they're still sending some from Europe. So, Zach, that just adds a whole nother layer of tasks for the consumer.
Imagine being in that situation. You're buying an ID4. You think, okay, I'm getting at least 3,750. Maybe I get the full 7,500, only to find out that the ID4 you're buying was actually shipped over from Europe and your tax credits go away. This is why it is so important. I mean, we're going to make lots of videos talk about this frequently because it's money back in people's pockets. I don't know about you, Justin, but 3,750.
Well, that matters.
I'll take that in a heartbeat. That's a lot of money.
Yes. Now, this is another reason why there's still a bit of uncertainty with how the Treasury Secretary is going to establish the final rules and regulations if this is signed into law, because the dealerships are going to need time to set up a way of communicating with, I guess it would be the department. No, it would be the IRS. It's a way of communicating with the IRS exactly how the VIN numbers for the specific vehicle correspond to how it qualifies for the tax credit. I was reading about how they're going to be required to share the VIN numbers so that is the tax credit only taken advantage of once, because it can only be once per vehicle, and where's the battery mineral sourcing coming from. They're going to have to set up like a whole new database just to keep track of this. It's a little bit wild.
Let's jump into some of the wild cards, some of the vehicles where there's a lot of uncertainty, and then we're going to go to the chat. We see lots of questions coming in, so bear with us. We want to go through some more vehicles, though, that have a chance at getting incentives, but there's some uncertainty.
Yes, we love the Ford Mustang Mach-E and F-150 Lightning, if only they were a tad bit more affordable. I think Ford is probably having some regrets right now, and that's actually reflected by a statement released from the Alliance of Automotive Innovation, where they basically said, look, you're giving us these new requirements like on day one or at the latest January 1st, 2023. They've already got battery supply commitments signed, Ford does, from battery manufacturers, specifically LG Chem. Ford also works with CATL. These are agreements that they were counting on carrying them years into the future for battery allocations. Now, why isn't it certain that the Mustang Mach-E and F-150 Lightning are going to qualify for the new tax credit? It's because of where the batteries and the battery minerals are going to be sourced from with these new agreements Ford has just signed with LG Chem and CATL out of China. There is a clause within the new bill that says foreign entities of concern cannot be sources of battery minerals, or you're like disqualified from the whole thing. Wow. So Chinese battery production is going to be in the spotlight for the next year. We're going to be hearing a lot about that. CATL is one of the world's biggest battery manufacturers, and they are a Chinese company. I also must note that about 51% of the world's lithium reserves are in China. What are we going to do about that, Zach?
To Justice's point, this is an American protectionism bill, not an EV adoption bill, and that is not, you can't frame it any better than that when you start to go through, okay, what vehicles qualify and what vehicles don't. This is not intended to boost sales of EVs. It's intended to protect American infrastructure and American independence off of China and other countries into the future.
I think it will make America's automotive industry stronger in the long run, but it's going to be a very rough 2 to 4 years. I mean, for example, we know that Hyundai is already signing construction paperwork to build a brand new factory in Georgia. Rivian, they're building a factory in Georgia too. Ford, Tennessee. There's other things going on in Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois. Electric vehicle manufacturing is really ramping up in the United States, but these things take time. And I believe from the statement released from the Alliance of Automotive Innovation, all they're really asking for is a bit more time, because otherwise they're going to lose these credits when they're really investing billions of dollars to try to do the things that the bill calls for. But you can't do it overnight. It's going to take a few years. We're talking like 2024, 2025.
Let's jump to the chat, answer a few questions. There's also a bunch of other news that we should try and hit on today if we can. PD says, I have a Rivian pre-order, pre-price hike. Will I still qualify in 2023? This is going to be the same news as the Toyota RAV4 Prime that we were talking about with Val. Got to get yourself a signed purchase order, a signed buyer's order.
Yeah, and it depends on the actual price that you pay, because the cap for trucks and SUVs is $80,000. Justice and I were talking just the other day on the show, debating what we think the cap should have been. I said 100,000 for trucks and SUVs. I believe Justice thought maybe 120. But yeah, Rivian has recently seen some pretty significant price increases. It depends on the price you're actually going to pay for that Rivian. So look at the details.
Let's keep going here. We've got from June. So if you place an order today, but don't receive until next year, the tax credit for 2021 is still applicable. Let's talk a little bit about the transition period.
We need to talk about that. So if you simply
place to do a whole video on that.
Yes. If you simply place an order, like I was about to for the Ioniq 5 before I got lucky, just placing an order, that is not good enough. The bill, the text of the bill makes it very clear. You can't just place an order with the dealership. You have to have a signed purchase order for a specific VIN number, in order to claim the credit next year. So like if you want to get, I don't know, what's a good example, Zach? Ioniq 5. I love my Ioniq 5. If you're going to purchase an Ioniq 5 that's supposed to be delivered in January, February of next year, and you want to claim the credit, since it's about to lose the credit, you need to have a signed purchase order with an allocated VIN number in order to claim it, the original credit that we have now, in 2023. Send me an email if you need help with that. Yeah, you guys can always reach out to me, Justin at joinyaa.com, or better yet, at the YAA community forum. I would love to give you guys further advice, and we'll figure it out together if we don't know the answer.
For the forum, join yaa.com/community. So if I keep MSRP under $80,000, I'm good.
Yes. But if it speaks above to 81,000, you're screwed. So please make sure.
Val, see you and Igor in the chat going back and forth, which is great, about getting a retail delivery report for your RAV4. But we've got here from Val, Zach, can we get a video on the top 5 most affordable EVs after implementation of the new EV tax credit rules? Justin, that sounds like a great idea.
Yep, throwing it on the calendar. Thank you for that.
And Jake says, can we get a PHEV video where tax credits do and don't apply? We need to get a little more information first, but I think we can do that. Yeah.
Yes, I admit that this is where I am most confused. Do plug-in hybrids still count? If you guys have seen anything substantive, let us know in the chat. Let us know if you've actually found out the answer to that question, because I know most journalists out there are still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's very unclear at this point. You've got to imagine that plug-in hybrids will have a place in this, but so far it's TBD.
Yes, TBD.
Why don't we jump over and talk a little bit about Ford? They actually just followed the Tesla playbook to a T. Prices over at Ford for the F-150 Lightning, Justin, they have, what's the word I'm looking for? Increased, not by a little bit, by a lot. Ford hikes F-150 Lightning prices, order bank to reopen for current reservation holders. The F-150 Lightning, for some trims, the lowest level trim, have increased the MSRP by 17%. To give you some perspective here, the entry-level Pro trim gets the biggest percentage hike, 17%, to $48,769. That includes your $1,800 shipping fee. The day of sub $40,000 Ford F-150 Lightnings, it is gone.
Now, I have not had the pleasure of test driving an F-150 Lightning yet. Plan to do so soon. I need to head up onto DC and test drive like a dozen new EVs. But yeah, from what I've heard from the test drives online, I love out-of-spec motoring. You guys are awesome. Be on the show sometime, Kyle Connor.
Yes.
Be on the show. Reach out to Kyle Connor. Anyways, they basically said what I've thought would be the case, which is that the F-150 Lightning Pro is too good of a deal at sub $40,000. They could not understand how Ford would ever sell them at like $39,900. I'm not too surprised, but still, this is just a sign of how we've seen time and time again that raw materials that go into battery manufacturing, not even including inflation, which means they have to pay their employees more, but raw material costs have gone up by about 110% in the past year. That is putting upward pressure on these prices. We've seen that Ford admitted themselves they no longer turn a profit on the Mustang Mach-E because of that.
Yeah, and honestly, that is the Tesla playbook. Start with a cheaper price point. The MSRP just kind of works its way up higher and higher.
You can't buy an F-150 Lightning Pro right now. You can't. You can only buy the Lariat or Platinum trim. The Pro is reserved for fleet orders right now. but in the future they'll offer it to the rest of us. Yeah, so it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, it really, really is. Now, another story I think is worth mentioning, and we talked about it a bit when we were referencing how GM's products are going to have access to tax incentives the way that this is currently worded. But with Ford, it's a little bit of a, we're on the fence on that. This is a really big moment for the future of American EV automakers. It seems like GM, with their Ultium platform, producing things here in the United States, this could be a moment where they actually rise back to being the leader in the space outside of Tesla. So by let me be clear, second place to Tesla in the EV race, because Ford has done a great job recently gaining market share, especially while the Bolts were catching on fire. But this is a big kind of maybe big moment where they're going to be competing once again.
Yes, indeed. Now we've seen that Ford, Hyundai, Kia, and GM are all kind of right behind. Not right behind. Take that back. Justice, don't yell at me in the chat. They're not right behind Tesla, but they are second, third, and fourth place when it comes to EV sales. Now, with this new EV bill, it looks like GM is going to start to really have an upper hand. Ford too, but especially GM, because they've established already the Ultium battery production plans. They're building new factories. They've got a heavy presence in the EV world, growing in Michigan and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
GM has a lot of stuff going on in Canada too, and that qualifies for all of these provisions we've been talking about.
All right. So if you've enjoyed today's conversation, I'm going to share it back on the screen. Again, if you go to joinyaa.com resources, then go to the blog. We do have a new article that Justin did some digging into used car prices. We'll be talking about that more at the top of the hour over on the Ray and Zach channel. But here it is right here. What EVs qualify for the new tax credits? See the winners and losers. Also, we have an awesome resource that Justin put together. Every state's plans for actual charging infrastructure. That's right here as well. And if you go under resources and click on YAA community, that'll take you to the free community forum. We have an EVs channel where you can have conversations there as well. It's right over here, the little lightning bolt. So please, if you are interested in having more conversations, if you're interested in learning more about the EV tax credits, please join us back here on the community forum. That's another place, another resource that we all share.
Yes, indeed. And we do expect the latter half of this week to be full of news, with the possibility of this bill being voted on in the House of Representatives. Who knows what else we will find out about. Friday, I'll be back here with Justice, the wonderful auto expert from YAA. Justice, and we're going to talk about what's new in EV world again.
Something tells me we'll have plenty to talk about. Also, huge shout out and congratulations to you, Justin. While we were on today, it was the first time ever we've had 100 people here with us at one time. So a huge milestone for this show, a huge milestone for you. Thank you, everyone who joins us on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And if you listen to the podcast, we appreciate it. If you leave a review or anything like that, it's been a blast starting up this channel with you, Justin, and seeing its growth. So congratulations, a nice milestone today.
Yeah, and a lot more to come. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for joining me today.
All right, guys, we'll see you back soon on Friday.